Okay, hello and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this afternoon's Facebook Live event. We're really pleased to have with us the people behind Penguin Watch, which, if you didn't know, is this year's British Science Week's featured citizen science project. If you don't know about British Science Week, go check it out, and of course, look at our Digital Discovery Festival on oxfordsparks.ox.ac.uk. So, I guess we should introduce these guys. Say hello.
I'm Tom Hart.
I'm Fiona Jones.
Great. Ooh.
And of course there's a big team behind us as well, of developers and people who make this happen.
Great. So what is happening? Tell us a bit about Penguin Watch.
Well, Penguin Watch is a citizen science project where we take data from cameras all around Antarctica that look at and monitor penguins all year round, and it passes it over to the public so that they can help us to analyse these data.
What is the data? So it's pictures, but what are people looking at?
Yeah, that's right. They're all pictures. So we have these time-lapse cameras out in Antarctica and around the Southern Ocean region, and they take photographs for us every hour throughout the whole year. So no matter what's going on, whether there's penguins there or not, they'll take a photo. So these aren't camera traps, which take photos when, the penguins come along. They're always taking pictures, and then we go and collect those images literally on a camera memory card, bring them back here, and those are what you see in Penguin Watch, those downloaded images.
So it's quite a journey to get some pictures.
It is. It's a relatively simple thing in a way when you're there, actually, to just take the memory card out, but the journey is a bit more difficult.
Yeah. How long does it take you to get down there?
Probably about 3 or 4 days, to be honest, if you go from, an airport in the UK, because you have to fly down to South America. So when I went last field season, I went to Buenos Aires. And then you take a further flight down to a port called Ushuaia, right at the bottom of Argentina, which I think I'm right in saying is the most southerly town in the whole world. And then you've got a 2-day boat journey after that. So it's quite a long time to get down there, but it's worth it when you do.
Great. So you have your public volunteers helping you look at these pictures. What sorts of things are people doing? Do they need to know a lot about penguins?
Absolutely not. So the interface is very simple, and it's deliberately simple so that anyone can do it. So you go there, you're taken through a 2-minute tutorial, and then you just click on every penguin or every chick or every egg that you see. So yeah, it's very deliberately made simple so that anyone can do it. But at the same time, as that interface being very simple, if they see anything that they think is weird or unusual, they flag it. And that can be quite a useful way for us to really just go through and look at what people think is unusual or interesting, so we can find the unexpected.
Yeah, and I hear you've surpassed a really big goal this week.
Should I take it? Yes, so today actually we passed our 5 million classification mark, which is incredible. We knew that people were interested and enthusiastic about penguins, but I don't think when we started this we would ever have expected to, reach that amazing goal. And as well today we passed our 250,000 classification mark for the British Science Week challenge. So it's only Tuesday and we've already reached our target, so that's amazing.
Amazing. So you've got all of these people looking at all of these pictures and you've got all of these classifications. But what are you trying to hope to learn about the penguins that we maybe didn't know from previous work?
I suppose the big thing is because we have so many observations, we can fill in the gaps that usually occur because we're not there. So what a camera can do is we can follow tons of colonies all at the same time. I mean, can look at when they turn up annually, when they start to breed, and the breeding success or failure of that. So it's really trying to study Antarctica as a whole, rather than the places that are really easy to get to, which is more how it has been traditionally.
Great. So I suppose whilst you're there then, the penguins are used to the cold. That's what they've evolved for, but you are not. I see you have some big jackets here. So how cold are we talking? How do you, as a researcher, survive that environment?
I'll give you that. I think this is the big one. So this is really for the extreme. You'll see we write our names on them because they all look the same. So this is for the extreme cold. This is for when we're looking at things like emperor penguins on sea ice and it's very cold. Most of the time, because it's marine, so we're on the coast, most of the time it's a bit warmer, and we'll probably have something half this size and the waterproof layers that Fiona's wearing here. So a lot of the time we're going around in inflatable speedboats to get to penguin colonies. So it might not even be that cold because it's the height of summer, but on the sea, surrounded by ice, obviously, it gets cold.
You get splashed, you want to be able to be protected from the water.
And so are they penguins normally found on the coast, or do you have to venture inland?
No, they're always on the coast, although it's a mistake. People assume emperor penguins are inland because they hear about the walk to get inshore. But they're breeding on sea ice, so they're actually still floating only 1 or 3 meters above sea on frozen water. Often during winter, that might be tens of miles away from the ice edge. But by the time those chicks are ready to fledge, it's right at the edge of the sea. So no, in one way or another, they are always on the coast.
I guess that makes it easier for you.
Very much so, yeah.
Brilliant. So could you walk us through a year in a penguin's life and maybe some of the movements that you've seen through Penguin Watch, and if there's been any surprising findings through this project?
So as Tom said, one of the main things that we're trying to look at with the Penguin Watch data is things like when adults turn up, when eggs are laid, when they hatch, how many chicks are surviving, when they fledge, all of that sort of information. And so it varies a little bit between species. We look at the king penguin. This might be a good chance to just highlight our friend. Are you able to show him or her? And the king penguin is quite unusual in that it has 2 breeding cycles throughout the year. So when we were there in January, we saw some of the chicks, which were almost as big as the adults, actually. They have this lovely brown down, which makes them look like a completely different species, but they are the chicks. But you also saw adults sitting on their eggs. So for those penguins, they have this unusual breeding cycle, whereas other penguins will lay the gentoos, chinstraps and adelies, which are the main 3 that I focus on down on the Antarctic Peninsula, will lay sort of just before Christmas on average, and then after they're incubated and hatched, the chicks will grow up, and a few months later they'll fledge, and that gives the parents a chance to then go fishing and stock up on all the food that they've been missing out on while they've been sitting on eggs.
And I think it was mentioned before about how you'd seen that actually there were more penguins hanging around at winter. Is that something that was specifically found through this project?
Yeah, very much so. I think, again, it's because we have so many cameras on a range of scales, and that was particularly gentoos, showing how local they are to the colony during winter.
So it says on the Penguin Lifeline's website, another one that you should go look at, that penguin numbers are declining globally.
Again, it depends on the species. So, and that's the whole point of Penguin Watch, is that actually you can't make sweeping generalizations. So studying 1 or 2 colonies doesn't really give us an idea of what's going on. Broadly speaking, gentoos are increasing on the Antarctic Peninsula, and adelies and chinstraps are declining. But again, adelies are doing okay in East Antarctica. You go up to South Georgia and we think that macaronis are declining, but we're not sure. So the nuances matter. That's the point of this, in that, you know, if we could measure them by satellite and do everything, we would, because we would know everything that's going on. And what we're trying to do is get as near to that as possible. So we want to compare the areas where ice has retreated, where it's stable or has advanced, and we want to compare the fished with the unfished areas and those that might be subject to human disturbance. So the point is, we can't just generalize, and these details and these locations matter.
And have you been able to come across any sort of insights on that basis then, to make any sort of links between activity, say human activity and the penguin populations, or?
It's slightly too early to tell, but yes, we have some pilot data showing what's going on, and we're really trying to continue so that that is good evidence one way or another.
And what would you do then? What's the next step then, once you've sort of gathered up the evidence? Where would you take it?
Well, it very much depends on the threat. If it's something like fishing, we go to CAMELA in the Antarctic Treaty System, and if it's up at South Georgia, we go to the South Georgia government. And again, depends on the threat. If the threat is purely climate change related, then it's going to be a lot more difficult to address that on a local scale. If it's fishing or human disturbance, that's easier under the Antarctic Treaty System. So we want the appropriate evidence to then go in and intervene.
So I think a lot of people probably want to know what it's like being around these penguins. I don't know, do you interact with the penguins much, or do you try to keep your distance from the populations?
Of course you try to keep your distance. We're biologists, we're very conscious of not disturbing any animal in their natural environment. Due to the nature of what we're doing, we're going and putting up these cameras in their colony, that obviously involves going fairly close to the penguins. But we just try to, you always say, walk nonchalantly past them. Just don't go looking any in the eye, doing anything that might be intimidating, walking too quickly or too close to them. You have to be particularly careful, if they had chicks or eggs, because what you don't want them to do is to, be startled and then move away, which could leave their eggs open to predation. So we're, generally happy with our interaction with them, that most of them actually, in my experience this year, seem to be quite inquisitive at what you're doing, not threatened at all. They'll just sit and think, oh, what are they doing? And get used to you very quickly. They're quite curious animals.
We could learn from them.
It's a bit like, I think of it, it's a bit like coming across a dog you don't know. You might love dogs, but if you see a dog do something, look at you very attentively or move fast, you might be a bit worried. And it's the same with penguins, in that if we tower over them and we move fast and we're loud, they get scared. So if we really quietly and gently move and stay low, they're generally really inquisitive because they don't have any land predators. So thinking a bit like a penguin, you can generally avoid any disturbance.
I'd love to see you act like a penguin, or think like a penguin. We had a question come in, which was whether or not there have been any particularly weird things that you've seen or spotted in your time out there. Or in the photos.
In the photos, well, I mean, certainly, it's strange to see something on a global scale. You see change. I see retreating glaciers, particularly up in South Georgia, very obviously. In the photos, one of the weird things is that local knowledge that might take a lifetime to accumulate in the field, you can see as a time lapse, and it's visually very obvious. One of the things we're looking at is the timing of breeding, and particularly in gentoos, we see them appearing to use poo, to melt the snow where they want to breed. So if you have dark poo on a light surface, that absorbs the heat of the sun and it melts out where they are congregated. So that can be an accidental benefit of forming up the colony early.
And I know it has been asked, but people say penguins are smelly. So, what's that like for your nose when you're visiting?
First impressions.
Yeah, that was one of the main things that people said before I was going. Was, oh, I've heard they're really smelly. So I'd geared myself up for them to be absolutely unbearably awful, and the reality wasn't quite so bad, I'm pleased to say. But yeah, you get the odd whiff. It's quite they're eating seafood, so it's quite fishy. Ammonia, rotten fish sort of smell. But on a cold day, actually, not too bad. If it's a bit warmer, which is really above freezing when you're down in Antarctica. I remember there was one day we opened the gangway of the ship and it really did hit you. So that was slightly less pleasant working environment, but on the whole it wasn't quite as bad as I had been told.
Okay. We've also had a question asking, what is the future? So will there be a shift in using, say, machine learning, like computers that can look at the images and automatically detect the things that you're looking for, or are there advantages to using people?
Definitely. There's two parts there, yeah. Definitely we are trying to automate this a lot more. And potentially we could put some of this actually on the cameras, so it makes decisions based on what it sees. But I think there's always going to be a place for humans.
Definitely, yeah. I think it would be a shame for people to think that their efforts aren't going to be needed. It's not going to be redundant, but any progress that we can make is really good. And one of the other main things we get asked is, can we not automate this? Surely with all the technology that we have, can't we use computer vision, machine learning techniques to do this? And the answer is, yeah, we probably can. And in fact, we're making really nice progress with a couple of scientists here in Oxford in making an algorithm like that. So we can do automated penguin detection. But yeah, I don't want that to replace what the people are doing, because I think actually they are incredibly good. Don't underestimate how good humans are at spotting things. Penguins don't always look penguin-shaped. They often look like a rock. It's black and white, it's fuzzy, it's snowing. Humans are good at finding them.
Great, so we still have a place with watching penguins. Well, finally, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about, what got you into what you're doing now. I mean, some people would see it as an absolute dream job to be going to study penguins. So yeah, how did this happen? Are penguins something you've always been passionate about, or did it just kind of evolve?
It definitely evolved. I came in through an interest more in fisheries, I think, and then more focused on penguins. I didn't necessarily see myself working in Antarctica, but it's no surprise, because I think I was quite adventurous and curious about that. And it's somewhere that you can make a difference because of the treaty system. So that was very important to me.
Yeah, mine's evolved as well. I've always been really interested in the polar environments, not just the animals, but the history and the exploration. And I studied biology for my first degree, which I loved. And then for my master's, I did climate change. So this is great. It's a way for me to mesh those two together and incorporate my love of the polar environments and penguins. Who doesn't like penguins? But yeah, if you'd have asked me, say, 5-10 years ago, I'd have had no idea, but I would have certainly been pleased that this is what I was doing.
Brilliant.
It's definitely wherever you go into it, or however you end up there is one thing, but having seen it, it makes a big impact on your life, and it's definitely very special when you actually get to go, and that's never going away.
And if you had some top tips for say young people who are thinking, wow, this is amazing, what would you say to them?
Just pursue sort of the area that you're interested in, really. I just told you my route, but that doesn't have to be your route. One of the great things about this sort of research, whether it's exactly this that we've been talking about or related things, is it's really interdisciplinary. So if you have an interest in engineering and you really love building things, don't think, oh, but I can't do that and not work on something like this. You can. So pursue what you're really passionate about and what you're interested in. Work hard on it. Look for extracurricular things to do with that area. And I think if you do that, then things have a way of finding, you find a path for yourself, even if it's not the same as what somebody else has done.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think you need a passion to get there. That's vital. And then in terms of practical advice, probably things like maths. People forget that going into biology, but it's don't leave maths behind, because it's one of the best transferable skills. And in the modern world, probably coding as well, or an awareness of computer science. That's coming into a lot more.
Definitely.
It's certainly, I don't think either of us anticipated computer science having such an active role in our biological research.
I'm now sat in the physics department, which I never would have expected, as a biologist. So it just shows how these things happen.
What do they call that office? The zoo?
It's Universe office, but we call it Zoo Town.
Zoo Town. Brilliant. Well, you two have been absolutely fantastic. Thanks everyone for watching and for your questions. Yeah, we're going to sign off now, but feel free to keep your questions coming in. I'm sure we can send them on. Don't forget to check out the rest of our Digital Discovery Festival events. We've got more Facebook Lives, Twitter takeovers, all sorts going on. So check out our website, www.oxfordsparks.ox.ac.uk, and of course, look up Penguin Watch and Penguin Lifelines. Thanks.